Hey guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today we're taking a look at the Kizer Cormorant. This will be my full review. I do have a first impressions posted already. If you want a really brief discussion, go ahead and take a look at that. If you want a little fuller examination of this knife, this is the video for you, along with some comparisons. I've got some other Kizers here. I've got some other favorite EDC style knives that I want to throw in the mix and compare to this. And so let's go ahead and get into it. First of all, let me say that I don't think this knife is quite as ugly as I once did. I would kind of compare this to the Chinese crested dog, and I'm going to try to find a picture of it and make it the title. Because it's one of those knives where you look at it and go, that is really off-putting. Like, that is not attractive in any sense. And yet over time, it sort of grows on you. And certainly this is a knife that has grown on me a great deal. Even when I first got it, when I did that first impressions, I was like, yeah, this is the dumbest looking thing ever. And I still, don't find it super duper compelling in terms of looks. However, practically, I find this so good that it really has won me over. And that side, the practicality of this has really kind of drawn me in. So now I don't even think it looks as bad as I once did. All right. So what is it about this knife that is so compelling, and why have I kind of slowly been won over to being a real fan of this knife? There are a number of reasons. So we're going to go through those. Before we do, go check out White Mountain Knives. Use the discount code SHARPSTUFF. That will get you 10% off. Also, for those of you who are in Canada watching, I should have shortly, either it'll be on this video or it'll be coming up here fairly soon, an associate's link to House of Knives, and that will give you, I think, 5% off or $5 off. Anyway, there'll be a discount associated with that, and again, it'll help the channel out a whole lot. So let's get back to the knife in question. What is it about this knife that I appreciate so much? Well, first of all, I think the size is pretty much right where you want it to be for an EDC knife. There is a smaller version of this, which of course you guys know I'm not a fan of. It's just much too small for me to be interested in. But this one is just a hair under 8 inches. The blade is 3 3/8. The handle, when closed, is just a little over 4.5 inches, not even 9/16, just a hair over, like maybe not even a 32nd over 4.5. The grip area is a little bit odd on this. If you come back here, which seems like the natural spot to put your finger in when your thumb lands in that ramp, it's only about 3.5, a little under 3.5 inches. However, this knife is kind of set up so you can choke up here, and there you get quite a bit of grip area, like over 4 inches. So it's kind of a strange duck in that sense as well, in addition to the looks of it. Finally, 3.7 ounces, which is pretty comfortable to carry around. All right, so let me go ahead and work through the features on this the way we always do, kind of starting with the blade and working our way down the knife. And the blade starts off with the very first thing that I find extremely compelling about this. So we've got this hollow ground sort of clip point blade. It's been called a number of different things, but I think it's pretty much, look, if you just look at the blade like that without that hole, you go, yeah, that's kind of an aggressive clip point. All right. You can't really call it a sheep's foot or Warren clip because it's got quite a bit of belly. Hollow grind here is great. It's nice and thin behind the edge. And this is the version that's in 3V steel, which is fantastic. I really like that, they went ahead and did this. Again, 3V steel is not something we're used to finding on EDC pocket knives, but the option here to get 3V steel at a pretty good price and get a lot of good performance out of it is very welcome. I find that highly appealing. All right. The other big thing here is the performance of this blade. You guys know I'm a fan of hollow grinds. I just find that, in terms of what I want to use a knife for, which is cutting stuff, a hollow grind just does such a great job because it's so thin behind the edge and it just bites in so deeply into material that it hardly matters what you're cutting. hollow grinds just perform so well. And I guess the argument, the opposite argument would be, well, they're not as heavy duty and hard to use, but this isn't a super heavy duty, hard to use knife anyway. And in fact, even in a hard use type of knife, I still want it to cut. And I find that the best way to get a really thick, robust blade to cut well is to go with a hollow grind. So, really, I don't care where the knife is trying to be in terms of light use or heavy, hard use. I still think a hollow grind is the best bet. All right, so we've got this great hollow ground blade, beautiful satin finish here, thin behind the edge, very sharp, slices like crazy. So all of those great things about this knife. Then we come to the button lock. It's a really nicely done button lock. You've got a great deployment option here in this hole, which they have, very purposefully sort of extended the blade for. All right. And that's kind of taking its cues from Spyderco. And Spyderco gets a lot of heat about this. Everyone's like, that stupid hole looks so ridiculous, but it works really well. And the same thing is true here on the Cormorant. Yeah, the hole does take away some of the cleanness. If this was just straight, that probably would address some of the aesthetic issues that I have with the knife, but that hole is highly functional. And so, I kind of welcome it, even though it makes it look a little bit odd. All right. Now, that is not the only deployment method. We've got this squared off blade so that I can flick it. I can flip it from here. I can do the thumb flip, front flipper type of motion here. So really, all of the ways that you can open a knife are available to you on here. And actually, I haven't even, you can also depress the button lock and deploy the knife that way. So tons and tons of options, super fidgety knife. I don't find myself flipping the knife open very often. And I also don't find myself using the front flipper very often. In fact, the squared off corners there are a little uncomfortable. So if I did have a complaint, I guess that would be my complaint. Now, frankly, I don't know what else you do. Like it's kind of an unfair complaint because those corners need to be like that if those deployment methods are going to work. So, while they're a little uncomfortable, it's like, well, what's the alternative? And I can't think of a really good one. So it is what it is. The action, this is on bearings. It's very smooth. It's very enjoyable. When we look at the construction here, you can take a look inside and you can see that we've got these nested liners. And in fact, the liners are not substantial. Like most of this is just G10. They are nested deeply back in here. They're milled out a little to save some further weight, although that's hardly necessary given the fact that they've sort of gone with the least amount of metal they can get away with while still providing a good solid structure. The G10 is grippy, it's thick, it's enjoyable. I like the layer. And not only does it add some tactility to the knife, and in fact, it's a very grippy knife. You don't have to have any concerns about this slipping or letting go of it when you kind of don't want to. All right. So all of that is really well done. Coming to, I guess we should touch on the clip. You can see it's a bent over deep carry clip, which recesses nicely into the handle. We've got standoff construction, keeping this nice and open so it's easy to clean. All right. All of those things are very welcome. The detent I didn't really touch on a whole lot. I just kind of demonstrated. The detent is pretty well perfect. Everything, whether you're front flipping or using the flipper or finger flicking or just rolling the knife open, all of them are very satisfying. They're very fast. They're very smooth. They're very enjoyable. So I have no complaints about the action. I will once in a while, let's see if I can get it to do it. I can't really get it to do it, but once in a while, it'll feel like the button lock is rubbing a little bit. But that's just because of a lack of lubrication. So if you just touch this up a little bit, you won't have that problem. But I noticed it when I first got the knife. And I haven't noticed it too much subsequent to that because I did lubricate the knife a little bit, but every once in a while I'll notice it again if I need a little further touch of KPL or something. All right, so those are all of the features and functions, and all of those work really, really well. I haven't spent too much time on ergonomics, but it's good in the sort of backed off grip that I'm in here, where you put your index finger into this choil or opening. This is my least favorite way to grip the knife. Up here, where my thumb is kind of resting on this little nicely jimped landing pad, this I find really, really good. All right. So ergonomics, I think, is a win, except that it's maybe not the most comfortable knife. If you compare this to a Para 2, yeah, the Para 2 feels nicer. All right, in both the choked up and the backed off position. So it's not the most ergonomic knife that I've ever seen, but it's definitely not bad. It doesn't fail in that regard. All right, so now we've got pretty much all of the main features and functions covered. I want to throw this alongside some of my other, some of the other knives I've been enjoying recently because of their action and because of their fidgetiness and all of that, and just kind of go through a little bit of a comparison along those lines. So let me start with the XL bag letter. I've got, by the way, I just so happen to have 3 extra large Kizers in my hands right now. So we've got the XL Assassin, the XL Cormorant, and the XL bag letter. Of these knives, just got to adjust the camera a little bit, guys. Sorry about that. Of these knives, my favorite one is still the bag letter. It's a little plainer, it's a little more attractive, and it's a little larger. This is a really, really nice knife, okay? And I probably enjoy it the most out of all of these. However, it's not the most EDC friendly out of these. In fact, the Cormorant is probably the most EDCable and the most fidget friendly out of these. The Assassin feels very good in hand. The action is enjoyable. The button lock works well. I have no serious complaints about it. It doesn't have, of course, the number of features that the Cormorant has. It's just, a little more standard, flipper deployed knife. It's fine for that. It's a little more hand filling. The ergonomics are a teeny bit better on the Assassin, but it's also not quite as different and compelling and interesting as the Assassin. So there's that to sort of consider there. Okay, let me pull in some other fidget friendly knives that I have around right now. Here is the CJRB Pyrite, a little smaller. I do wish if they did a Pyrite in this size, that would be fantastic. I would really, really enjoy that. As it stands, the Pyrite is a little smaller, like 3 1/8 inch on the blade, rather than the 3.5 inch that I prefer. But again, another very fidgety, very fun button lock knife that that's also a little more of a standard look. And if you want something smaller, this might be good for you. Or if you like the smaller Cormorant, that's also something to think about. Throw in the Benchmade. Why is this drifting over? Sorry, guys. Throw in the Benchmade Super Freak, which again is famously fidgety and fun. The other thing, the reason I brought this knife in is because it's an example of a steel you don't see every day. So we've got M4 steel, we've got the 3V steel over here. Both of these are pretty compelling steels that I enjoy quite a lot. Both of these are very fidget friendly, very EDC friendly knives. There's a big discrepancy in price, but they had so many other similarities that I wanted to throw them in. We do need to include the Para 2 here. All right, Para 2 is really, a standard. This is S45VN with sharp dressed knives scales on it. All right, so this is not sort of your standard Para 2. However, it is a very fidget friendly knife. It's a very EDCable knife, and for those reasons, I thought I'd throw this in. Again, the price is going to be a little bit different. Finally, let's throw in a Civivi that recently came out. This is the Civivi Voltaic. Sorry about that, guys. The name evaded me for a second there. So Civivi Voltaic, you can see very handsome knife, very, very attractive looking knife. Not as interesting, not as compelling, in terms of features or blade steel or some of those things. but I thought I'd throw it in. It's very similar in size, and it's also, it's another knife that has a couple of deployment options. So it can do the flipper tab, or with that fuller, you can get a nice finger flick on it. So very enjoyable option that you may look at or may think about in terms of comparing these two. All right, so I've got a few comparisons. I think you can see why, guys, this stacks up. Like, just nothing looks like this. Nothing feels like this. There's just a lot of creativity here, and variation that we're not always used to seeing. So because of that, to me anyway, this knife, hold on, I'm trying to get the couple others in the shot. For those reasons, this knife kind of stands out when I try to compare it to some of these other knife options that we can look at here. All right, so to me, all right, you may be looking at this going, Kevin, that is so, like, I would take any one of these other knives. That thing looks so ridiculous. And why didn't they just do all the same features, but make it look like, the Pyrite, which is a very, this is like, if you imagined what a knife looks like, this is kind of what you get. And that's what they went with the Pyrite. And I kind of love that. In the similar vein to the Civivi that we looked at a second ago, very traditional looks. Okay. But to me, having something that's a little bit different and a little bit interesting is compelling. All right. Also, of course, I don't think anything that I brought out there had the hollow grind. And again, 3V steel is just not something you find very often on a folder. So those are some comparisons for you. I think we've gone through a number of, we've gone through all the features, we've gone through all the comparisons. I hope you can start to see at this point why I find this knife so interesting and so different, and why I end up carrying it an awful lot. It's also pretty lightweight, so I'll drop this in my pocket when I'm wearing lighter weight pants or a pair of shorts or something along those lines. It's also not very threatening. All right, so all of that, I know we're quite a ways into this, but I wanted to kind of leave no stone unturned. That's what I try to do in my full review videos. And this knife, I think, justifies a little more discussion. So thanks a lot for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below. Did I convince you? Do you still think this is the dumbest thing that you've ever seen? Or are you kind of like, Kevin, maybe that knife is starting to grow on me. Maybe you're right. About either the Chinese crested dog or about this knife. All right, thanks a lot for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll talk to you soon.